Let me know if I can.
Yeah, you're an expert.
Me.
All right, good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Milwaukee Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the table in the hall. If you have not picked up an agenda, please do so. It contains important information about the process. If you wish to be included in the mailing list for a decision, please add your name and contact information to the sign-up list located on the table in the hallway. If you wish to testify, please also fill out a yellow comment card. We will follow the basic format listed on the back of the agenda. It includes all of the hearing procedure steps. We may vary from the process based on the specific circumstances of each hearing. Next on the agenda is minutes. I don't remember getting minutes, actually.
We do not.
We do not have minutes. Okay. Then that's wrong. Okay. Next on the agenda is informational items.
So we have both the work plan and the comprehensive plan update on there, so I'm not going to touch on any of that. I would like to thank Commissioner Jones for his service on the Planning Commission and the DLC. I believe this is your last meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, just from city staff, we would like to express our appreciation for all the time you've put in over the last few years.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
We'll miss you.
Thank you.
Sorry to hear it.
Yeah.
Is that it? That's it?
That's it.
That's all the
That's all.
information.
Yeah.
There'll
Would
be
you-
more information.
Would you like to tell our audience how they can apply for Commissioner Jones' position?
Oh, yeah, that's a good.
We can.
No.
There is a volunteer page on this the City of Milwaukee website. I believe it's just milwaukeeoregon.gov/volunteer. So there are opportunities to apply for that. And I don't know if there are any other board and commission vacancies on other committees, but yeah, for all of you out there watching, go ahead and apply.
I
now.
believe PARB and Tree Board have been looking for people, or at least they've
They
been
do.
advertising for
Okay.
it.
Thank you for that. Okay. Audience participation. This is an opportunity to comment on items not on tonight's agenda. If you wish to comment on an item that is on the agenda, there will be time for comments after the presentation. Does anyone wish to comment on an item that is not on tonight's agenda? No. Okay, great. All right, we'll move on to public hearing. The public hearing on City Hall Council Chambers is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider application number HR-2018-001. The purpose of the application is to request a type 3, what's HR? Sorry.
Historic resources.
Historic resources, thank you. Historic resources approval, and on property located on 10722 Southeast Main Street. The applicant has the burden of proving that the application is consistent with the City of Milwaukee's zoning, subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, and any applicable municipal code provision. The applicant has the burden of proving that the proposal conforms with all of the city's applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance sections where the criteria can be found.
Title 19, Section 304, Downtown Zones, 19403, Historic Preservation Overlay, 19904, Community Service Uses, 19907, Downtown Design Review, and 19106, Type 3 Review.
All testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria. Failure to address a criterion or raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow the Planning Commission an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the City Council based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow a response precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Any party with standing may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission to the City Council. Persons with standing are those who submit written comments or testify in person or sign the Planning Commission attendance sign-up sheet in the hallway. I will recognize those persons who have completed testimony cards and given them to me. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record so they may be entered into the minutes. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria and to avoid repetition and irrelevant information. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. All right. Conflicts of interest in site visits. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain from this hearing?
No.
No. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest?
No.
Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to report on any ex parte contacts?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
We have two?
Yep.
Wow, all right.
Okay. Go ahead.
I sent this message that I'm going to read via email to the city manager, the mayor, city council, to Denny, to Vera, and to other various leaders, including Joseph Edge in our community. I am sending this message as a planning commissioner and concerned resident, recognizing our climate is changing at an accelerating pace, impacting our city and the entire planet. We're already witnessing more extreme weather and climate events in our region. Acting together early ensures that we are more empowered and prepared to preserve our health and quality of life for current and future generations. As a planning commissioner at our October 23rd, 2018 meeting regarding the City Hall remodel, I cannot use the Climate Action Plan to implement new ideas and better the project for city staff, reducing the city's carbon footprint, reduce the city's energy use, or encourage residents to follow an example set by a leader, our city government, as a demonstration on how residents can reduce their own carbon footprint. As the Climate Action Plan was not a land use-based document yet, but I do understand it will be part of updating our comp plan. The only criteria I can use for a minor mod in a CSU as follows. Does not increase the intensity of use, meets all requirements of underlying zone relating to building size and location and off-street parking and standards of Title 19, does not result in deterioration or loss of any protected natural feature or open space, does not negatively affect nearby properties, does not alter or contravene any conditions specifically placed on the development by the Planning Commission or City Council, does not cause any public facility, including transportation, water, sewer, and storm drainage, to fail to meet any applicable standards relating to adequacy of the public facility. For years, the Planning Commission, I and some of my fellow commissioners have been asking to go paperless as all information is available digitally. I see producing paper copies as an unnecessary energy production, as a large material carbon footprint, and an overabundance cost to our tax-paying residents. Planning Department graciously has quit creating and shipping paper copies to those that have requested it. Unfortunately, I am not allowed to have my own personal electronic device at the diocese, so paper copies are produced anyways for me to review during all meetings and hearings. I am sure this is true for all boards, commissions, and committees. One of the reasons why I am told I cannot have an authorized electronic device at the diocese is because tablets to City Council have taken up valuable IT department time. The logic is more tablets will lead to higher demand on IT capabilities. Once again, City of Milwaukee does not have the time, staff, or money to forward new projects or even residents-led changing ideas. I am asking the city manager to implement a cost-saving carbon footprint reduction and reduction in city staff time by permanently placing an authorized electronic device at each diocese seat for all councilors, board, committee, and commissioner members to access the information needed during meetings to go paperless. This strategy reduces the city carbon footprint, eliminates the need for city staff time to mail, copy, transport, and recycle paper items. items. It also reduces IT time by having the authorized electronic devices there in one place and connected together to one server without being compromised. In other words, increase the transparency of our city government. Now you ask how you to pay for this project. I would simply ask the departments that produce paper copies, city recorder, planning, city manager, finance, council, and all others how much they spend shipping, buying, printing, copying, and mailing paper copies to residents. Cut that budget in half and ask them to pay the balance. Just a suggestion, but the initial cost in the long run saves money over time, reduces city staff time, reduces city expenses, and reduces the overall carbon footprint. I have attached page 58 of Milwaukee's Climate Action Plan that clearly states, consider total cost of ownership, implement lean manufacturing practices, and prevent paper waste. I hope City of Milwaukee can lead with an example of how its own House of Government is following its own recommendations and consideration in protecting our environment now and for future generations. Thank you.
I'm not 100% sure what that has to do with this hearing. Can you restate that connection to this hearing?
I was going to make a recommendation that we ask for electronic devices at each diocese, but that situation has been solved, and I will bring that up during our planning department other business and updates.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I was present at the most recent meeting of the Design and Landmarks Committee where they discussed some ways in which staff had responded to some of their suggestions, but I did not participate in the discussion.
Okay. All right. Okay. Does anyone have any rebuttal to the ex parte context declared by commissioners?
No.
Okay. Will any commissioner who has visited the site prior to this hearing please raise their hand? Okay. Did any of those commissioners who visited the site speak to anyone at the site or note anything different from what is indicated in the staff report for this application?
No.
No? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the Planning Commission? Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? Okay, let's proceed to the staff report presentation.
Need to clean the screen. Oh, there we go.
Good evening, Vera Coles, Assistant Associate Planner here at the Planning Department, and Lauren Lustfeld, who's the chair of the DLC, is here to discuss the DLC's contribution to this review process. I've summarized it, but I'm going to ask Lauren to elaborate on it. The application is for a historic resources review. There is also a downtown design review and a minor modification to a community service use review as part of it, but the type 3 portion of the application is the historic resources review. The overview of the project, the current council chambers, which we're sitting right now, are proposed to be moved into the existing garage bay down on the first floor of City Hall. This space will be updated to accommodate the necessary functional requirements of a civic space. It will house city council hearings, other boards and committee meetings, as well as court functions. There are upgrades that are being proposed to that space to meet energy code as well as acoustical and security needs for that space. The proposed work, again, requires a historic resources review, community service use review, and downtown design review. The summary of the work that's being proposed is the addition of an accessible entrance at the rear of the building to the parking lot, replacing the existing roll-up garage doors with new roll-up doors, replacing the existing wood windows in the fire bay with new wood windows or fiberglass clad windows. It's on the south side of the building. I'll go into that in a bit more detail. Replacing the existing swing door on the south facade with a new entry door, and provide new exterior lighting above both of those swing doors, as well as some small signage to indicate where the accessible entrances are. This is a site plan, and you can see that Main Street is to the left of the screen, and the area of work is on the south and the eastern portion of the building. This is a floor plan that just outlines the proposed council chambers in what is now the fire bay, identifying where the new accessible entrance will be, sort of at the top of the screen, the new swing door to the right of the screen are on the south, and then the roll-up doors, they're at the bottom of the screen or on the west side, and then the new windows that would be replaced are again on that south facade. To provide the code-required accessible second exit, a new door is proposed within the width of an existing window opening, and it'll be custom-sized to work with the existing window proportions. The proposed accessible entrance is located at the rear of the building, adjacent to the parking lot, so the street-facing facade of the building is not going to be significantly affected by this proposed change. Oops, did I skip a screen? No, okay. The proposed development was presented to the DLC on October 1st, and based on the application materials that were originally submitted, the DLC voted to submit recommendations to the Planning Commission. Those were reflected in in the staff report. The Design and Landmarks Committee asked that the applicant investigate the possibility of retaining the existing historic south side windows by either refurbishing them with insulated glass or using storm windows, so not to replace them. To explore ways to provide more transparency in the new roll-up doors, the original application only showed one bay of glass in the roll-up doors as opposed to the 4 rows of glass that are in the existing doors now. And they also asked that the applicant look into installing security barriers such as bollards at Main Street to prevent someone from being able to drive right up to the chambers or to the new council chambers and to the courtroom.
Yeah, as the City Hall and a kind of a value to the city of Milwaukee, the DLC felt like retaining as much as possible and going to the extent possible to keep or protect the historic relevance of the windows was important, given that would mean further investigation, potentially an upgrade of window systems, et cetera. It was intended that the group the design team would look closely at mullion placements, the actual possibility of putting storm windows in to actually retain the existing windows in place, or to find a fiberglass or wood option that would provide the insulative value with current code while maintaining the existing proportions of the windows and mullion placements and color. And then during the presentation, the portion that we discussed at length, kind of the transparency of the roll-up doors, there was a very telling series of images from the original building to the 1970s to its current state, and we felt like as much as possible to go back to the original version to maintain transparency so that during 90% of the building's use, when there is no council chamber meeting in progress, that citizens of the city can recognize and see the building as it was originally intended, and that the design team look for alternative ways to provide both the security and privacy that they intend, and also look at ballistic options were discussed in detail. So the opportunity of bringing in either an acoustic or ballistic curtain to pull in front during council chamber or other meetings where there needs to be a heightened level of security was suggested, and meanwhile bringing up the transparency to full clear glass as you see today. We also discussed other options of maybe putting in a film or some kind of translucency that was reasonable, and that balance of both solid and transparent glass. Solid to transparent. And then the final was just a recognizing that if there were to be council meetings down in the fire bay, that anybody could drive up to the fire bay as it is a fire bay. And so there was a suggestion of either bollards or some type of landscaping that may not look like a typical bollard, but would provide the protection for vehicle ramming or whatever it might be at that point. So.
So what you see here on the screen are the revised drawings that were submitted as an addendum to the original application materials intended to address and respond to the DLC recommendations. Again, one of the recommendations was to investigate retaining the existing historic south side windows, and I've circled those in red on the left hand. So those are the windows that are being proposed to be replaced. In the addendum that was submitted and was included as part of your staff report, the applicant found that the condition of the existing windows is beyond repair, and I know the applicant is here that will have some additional information to submit to you to discuss that. The wood on several of the windows is rotten, according to the applicant, and those windows would need to be removed to be able to see what the extent of the water damage is in the frame and in the windows themselves. The goal of the project is to be able to upgrade flashing and sealing to prevent even more water damage or into the windows or into the walls. If the existing windows, again, according to the applicant, are repaired in place rather than removed and replaced, the pattern of water damage could continue and lead to further building degradation. So the applicant provided more information, but was continuing to request that they are able to continue to replace the windows and not restore them. But again, they'll have more information to provide to you as well. The preferred new windows are a fiberglass exterior window with wood on the inside of the window, and I think that they have some sections of actual windows to show you during their application. But the idea is that they would match the frames and the mullions of the existing original windows. In addition to hosting public events, again, the repurposed garage is going to serve council and court functions when it's closed. The garage doors need to serve functionally as a wall and provide quiet, security, and protection from the weather. The garage doors were replaced in 2013, so the ones that are here now are from 2013, but they don't meet energy code, acoustical, or security requirements for the proposed use. They look good, but they don't really function for what the new proposed use is of the fire bay. As originally proposed, and that's in the black and white sketch on the right, the existing doors, the doors would be to replace with new insulated doors that referenced the proportions but didn't include as much of the transparency, and that's and those were the design that the DLC responded to and provided feedback on. After they made the recommendations, the applicant submitted the revised plans that you see in the color, sort of in the middle. The revision includes garage doors that maintain the clear glazing recommended by the DLC, and they're proposing a suspended curtain track on the inside so that a solid curtain can be drawn across the face of the roll-up doors during sensitive proceedings like court, for example, or something like that. The wood would be painted to match the existing garage door and trim. So the center photo is what the proposed is. And on the left, you see the sort of the evolution of those doors over time. The top picture is the original 1939 building. I think that photograph is from the 1940s, but it's the original doors. And then we see what happened in the 70s. And then at the bottom, you see the building as it is today in the 2013. So the new proposal, or the revised proposal, mirrors the original doors. The Design and Landmarks Committee were able to take another look. We sent those revised materials to the DLC, and they had a meeting and provided some additional comments. The comment that I received from Lauren regarding the doors were that the updated elevations and the curtain met the spirit of preservation of the historic City Hall. There were some comments made regarding the windows and the request to replace the windows, that there was not enough supportive documentation, and you received that addendum, photos and analysis to justify the complete removal of the windows. There wasn't enough detail of what the new replacement windows would be like. And they recommended that storm windows should be considered, so the DLC was asking for a lot more information to be able to justify the replacement.
It just, again, felt really strongly that any effort that could be made to preserve those windows as closely as to matching the existing as possible, particularly for City Hall and particularly for this city where we have very few of these buildings left. It really felt like we wanted to make the case again that we look closer at preservation, or at least very accurate new windows replacement.
This photograph shows the building as it is today. I've circled the windows that are proposed to be replaced. The findings that we included in the staff report detail the recommendation that the department believes that the proposal does meet the approval criteria for alteration. And by proposing energy efficient, historically consistent windows, the project does set up future window replacements. And I know that the applicant will be going over kind of what's the future plan as part of the bigger context for this. And then we just note, again, the windows and their visibility from the street. But I think the new proposed windows, I'm anxious to see to hear what you have to say about that once we look at those. So historic resources review, there are several approval criteria for alteration, and the findings detail all of those. Called out a few of them. The approval criteria for alteration on a historic property relate to several guidelines as detailed in the findings. Regarding the proposal matching existing materials and finishes currently present on and around the building exterior, and that the proposed new garage doors do mimic the current and the original doors on the building. That the modifications made to the existing windows to create the second code-required accessible exit. So even though it's in the rear of the building, the code doesn't sort of recognize street-facing facade to the exclusivity of any other facade, so it still matters. But they're keeping the existing wood proportion, or the window proportions with that new door. And the materials selected correspond to the existing building materials. So we think that we're still keeping in the spirit of the building with that new accessible entrance. The new door is going to be placed within the width of that existing window, and it's going to be custom sized to work with the proportions of the window. And that the alteration is located on an interior corner, so it really will only be visible from the parking lot. Regarding the replacement windows, the code does provide some latitude for being able to replace windows if they match the visual qualities of the original windows as closely as possible. And again, more information is required from the applicant to be able to show that the wood window frames are preferred in meeting that criteria. But if non-wood replacements exhibit similar visual qualities as their wooden counterparts, they may be acceptable. So the code does provide some latitude, but we want to make sure that we're choosing the right materials and the right windows for a building like this. And then back to the doors, the garage doors replaced in 2013, but they don't meet any of the code. But we think that visually they do match. That they didn't meet energy code, acoustical, security requirements, but they do visually match the original doors. So we certainly support and recommend that replacement be approved. The new signage that's proposed will direct visitors to the accessible entrance. It's small, and it's intended to be located right at the south facade of the building, right at that door. So it won't be a huge sign that's going to be visible from the sidewalk. The downtown design review portion of the application asks that compliance with Title 19 and then with any of the applicable downtown design standards. The roll-up door replacement, it's less than 25% of the surface area of the street-facing facade. So it's a minor exterior alteration and meets the standards for a Type 1 downtown design review. The addition of the accessible entrance is exempt because it's needed to bring the building into compliance with the American with Disabilities Act. So that does not, the code specifically exempts that activity from review. The proposed improvements were reviewed against the design standards for ground floor windows and doors, which requires currently in the code a minimum of 50% glazing for that ground floor. The building was constructed before that standard was in place. So in its original construction, the building met 42% of that 50% standard. So the percentage of glazing on the original structure is legally non-conforming because it's always been like that. The ground floor facade is about 1,230 square feet. Glazing is about 520 square feet. But the proposal replaces those doors with the exact replica. So we're not bringing it further out of conformance with that standard. We're matching that 42%. So there's no decrease to that glazing. And finally, the community service use review, the planning director determined that this was a minor modification to that community service use. It meets, certainly the building meets the underlying standards. It's not resulting in a deterioration or loss of any protected natural feature, et cetera. The bigger question was increasing the intensity of the use. That was the question that we wanted to, as far as this piece of the review goes. The existing council chambers and conference room located on the second floor are going to be converted into office space. The garage bay is currently underutilized, serving as overflow for storage for events. So we're sort of moving some things around. Currently at peak meeting time, which is really the most intense use of the building, it's really not the day-to-day, it's really during these big meetings. Well, not this meeting, but the typical big meetings, where both the council chambers and the conference room are typically overflow and are full of folks. Only the fire bay would be used for those meetings. So we don't think that we're increasing the intensity of use by moving something downstairs that currently would be taking up 2 rooms. This will be office space, and the conference room is currently office, or has now been converted into office space. So the intensity of the use of the building has not been increased through the moving of functions around. So the commission has some options for your decision. Approving the application subject to the recommended findings, approve it with modified findings and conditions. You could deny the application or you could continue the hearing. Staff's recommendation is to approve the applications and adopt the findings. We do recommend that the commission include a condition within the decision, if you so choose, to address any potential recommendations from SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. They have not completed their review. They have 30 days to do their review, and they're taking the 30 days to do their review. So they may certainly come back with some review conditions that may require, for example, the windows to be restored. And so we would like to craft a condition that if you were going to make a decision to approve this evening, that the condition could cover a SHPO recommendation like that. So we wouldn't necessarily need to come back unless something was significantly different from what the application is. But so with that, that concludes the staff report. Happy to answer any questions that you have. And the applicant is here with materials to make a presentation as well.
Okay, any questions for Vera? Or Lauren?
Is the fire pole staying?
The applicant can address that. They know all the answers to those things. I think it was still up in the air, no pun intended, at this point. What was a pun for me, anyway? But I did forward that question over to the applicant, so that they are prepared to answer that question.
It was brought up in the DLC
Yes.
meeting that it wasn't actually wasn't referenced in the existing drawings, and one of the particular members of the DLC felt like it should be at least referenced, or
right.
at least there should be some recognition of what's going to happen to it. So
That's a good point, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Have we received any correspondence on this matter other than those items included in the meeting packet?
No, we have not.
Okay. Well, then let's move on to the applicant testimony. Comments from the applicant or their representative?
Hello. I'm Tracy Orvis with Deliberation Architecture. I'm the project architect for this proposal.
Damian Farwell, Fleet and Facility Supervisor for the city.
Great. Can you state your address too?
Yes, it's 200 Northeast 20th Avenue. 200 Northeast 20th Avenue, Suite 200, Portland, Oregon, 97232.
Thank you.
4305 Southeast Fieldcrest, Milwaukee, Oregon.
Thank you.
Damien, do you want to
Sure.
start?
I'll start with some context on the building and the sort of the facilities side history. The building was built in 1938. It has 40 windows. The only remaining original windows are the 7 in that garage bay. Most windows have been replaced at least twice. Many of the double pane windows, which are the most common that you see when you walk around the building, are actually circa 2001. Especially those facing west have rot and air leak issues, as well as the original windows have significant rot. Our goal is to identify a type of replacement window for the garage bay that will inform future decisions to replace windows, especially in the west-facing facade. We'd like to see it in the next year. So, of course, they would all match, whereas now I think we have at least, I want to say 3, if not 4, different window designs in the building. And of course, the window design needs to closely resemble the original window design aesthetically, as well as reflect stewardship of public money, in that the windows be priced reasonably, long-lasting, and not require significant maintenance. So the original windows, if, yeah, could you pull up a couple of those?
Yeah, these
The ones with rot.
Yeah. Okay. So is that, let's
Oh,
rotate that.
that was supposed to turn. There we go.
There we go.
So this is one of the original windows. There was not a metal tool used to do that. That is not only a plastic fork, that's a compostable plastic fork.
Wow.
It's the rot's significant, and you can see if you
my gosh.
if you page, yeah, if you go back a little bit there. So that was just a break in the paint, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, an 1/8 of an inch. That I started to pick the paint back, and then the rot was evident. If you look at those windows, you'll see that broken paint is common throughout those windows. So the condition we see is consistent with an 80-year-old window that's been exposed to the elements and not necessarily maintained effectively. It is not necessarily consistent with an ability to repair or to epoxy soak or the common methods that you would use to salvage a window in place. As well, a repair would require asbestos and lead testing and potentially abatement. As well, we would like to see those windows removed because we believe there has been moisture penetration into those walls. We'd like to get a look at it and to deal with it now. There was an ant infestation below one of those windows, which I'm not worried about the ants, but it suggests moisture penetration. A quick comparison of replacement windows. Wood windows anticipated 10 to 20-year life. I should point out that our current windows are failing some of them are failing at 9. And there's also ample evidence that the city hasn't been effective at maintaining wood windows. And I would like to say, I'm here now, we can maintain wood windows now. I think that would be a little naive. If we look at Leading Library, if we look at City Hall, if we look at the Burtman House down by Milwaukee Museum, in every one of those instances, those windows are suffering for lack of maintenance. A fiberglass window lasts 40 to 60 years, requiring little, if any, maintenance. And I'll just touch on some general costs, and I'll get more specific with those costs later. A wood window costs 50% more per window, which for this size window is about $2,000. Maintenance on a wood window, I would anticipate to be, on average, maybe $500 a year. The first 3-4 years, it wouldn't be nearly that, but after about 5 years, that cost increases dramatically. So I think $500 a year is pretty conservative. Now on the 7 bay windows, it adds up pretty fast. If you go to the 7 bay windows versus like maybe 20 total windows, if we wanted to do the bay immediately and we wanted to do 12 windows on the front facade, we're at 20 windows at $500 plus per year. From an insulative performance standpoint, there are better designed thermal breaks in fiberglass. Wood is less stable in fiberglass, so you have less sealing issues as wood expands and contracts. Wood is less reliable over time. And with the fiberglass window, you have a little bit better opportunity to customize exactly what kind of glass goes into that window. Oftentimes for modern windows, you'll specify that glass based on the compass direction. So an east-facing window, you might be great with that solar gain. A west-facing window would overheat the space, so you specify a glass that blocks better that solar radiation. So a little more specifically, just as an example, one of the those south windows are about 6 feet by 6 feet. The quote we have for the wood, and we have samples we can show you. The quote we had for that wood window, they gave us a range, $3,400 to $4,100 per window. We would need to paint it, call it $500. The total is about $4,350 for a 6 by 6 window. The fiberglass window quote was $2,043 for that same window. Neither of those prices include installation. So installation is about $2,000 to $4,000 per window, depending on size. We'll call those $4,000. So windows installed, it's $6,000 for fiberglass, $8,000 for wood. And if you break that down into life cycle cost, a fiberglass window at $6,000, life cycle approximately 50 years with negligible maintenance, breaks down to about $120 a year. The wood window, $8,000 installed, lasts 20 years, and I think that's really generous. Breakdown is $400 a year based on just the purchase price installation. Maintenance, $500 a year. So that those together, $900. So the differential is about $800 a year. And for 1, 2, 5 windows, that's manageable. A larger scale, 20 windows, it's hard to support. And to be really frank, when we entered this process, I thought I would be pitching wood windows because I thought it would be a lot easier to replicate the original windows in wood. But what I've seen in fiberglass windows, I think that, and Tracy can go into some of we have measurements of the window frames, of the setbacks, of the rail style mullion. I think this fiberglass window, due to its frame dimensions and setback, bests both the wood window and every replacement window in the building when compared to the original windows. You can see if you look from this vantage point, if you line up with your eye the replacement window above it and this window, you'll see the difference in the width of the window framing, and that's what I'd rather not see, you know.
Let's see.
Yeah. So that's the upper window. You can see sort of the weight or the width of that window frame, and the lower one's a little bit wider, a little bit heavier. And you know, I think cost and longevity aside, I think, as I said, I think this window best aesthetically, both the replacement windows on the building as well as the wood one. And when you throw in the longevity and the lower maintenance cost, that's what resulted in this proposal. And I think there's some trim details at the frame of the window, and we're perfectly happy to source custom milled trim or whatever we need to do in order to make it look right. But that's that's not part of the actual window itself. It's part of the framing and the trim.
So From that, I'm going to kind of go into a comparison between two of the existing window types. The second one, there's a couple small variations to it, but it's these windows that are in this room pretty much everywhere except for the garage bay. Let's open up that file here. Okay. Here's the full. Go to view. Oh, thank you. Screen mode, there we go. Okay. So sorry, it's a little dark here. I tried to keep the contrast kind of high so you could really see the difference between some of these mullions and jams. So this one right here, it represents the jam condition for the existing garage bay windows. These are the only original windows remaining in the building, aside from, of course, the ones that have, arches or special shapes. Those are still original as well. But you can kind of see these are set back a decent amount, 4.5 inches from the face of the brick sill here. We've got a pretty small jam condition here and narrow mullions between. This one off to the left represents a majority of the replacement windows that were put in. So you get a bit of a thicker jam condition at the exterior. And these are second floor windows. These are double hung with a central fixed portion. You see they're relatively close, but when you stand and look at them, outside, if you look between the first floor and the second floor window on that south side, you can see some differences. These two on the right represent proposed options. The Milgard Essence is the fiberglass clad wood window. That's the option that we would ideally like to go with. You can see here they've got a thicker interior mullion, so this is the inside of the room. But through the use of additional trim pieces out here, we can easily mimic the existing mullion proportions out here to kind of keep that same look from the exterior. You can see this is set back a little bit farther than this window, about 3/4 of an inch. And then this represents the versatile wood replacement windows. And this one you can see sits further forward within the window opening. You get a very similar mullion profile, however. And then with all of these off to the side, I've shown a muntin profile, which is the division between the panes. So the original muntin, because there's just single pane glazing in there, is quite small, and does have some like an OG detail, so a little kind of swoop at the muntin with a more straight profile on the outside. The replacement windows that are currently in the building here have a slightly thicker muntin. It has a similar profile, and this is kind of where some of these replacement windows differ. Some of them have 1/4 inch glazing, some have like full insulated glazing. It's kind of all over the place. There's 2 or 3 different conditions there. So that does affect that muntin size a little bit. With the Milgard, because we're going with we're able to go with some pretty heavy duty insulated glazing there. You can get what they call simulated divided lights, where you still get a wood muntin, you still get that traditional look, but instead of it being separated panes of glass, you have a continuous piece of glass with a stop wherever there's a muntin. So it still looks like it's broken up into smaller pieces, but it's really one piece of glazing. And same with the versatile wood replacement windows. You'd also get insulated glazing here, but you could maintain that smaller muntin profile. They have a few different options for both of these manufacturers, so we can match it as closely as possible to what's there currently. So yeah, we are really trying everything we can to be as sensitive as possible to the existing conditions. And if those windows on the south facade were in better condition, we would definitely consider that. But they're in pretty rough shape as it stands right now. So we want to try and maintain as much as we can, but still be reasonable about long-term maintenance as well.
Yeah, all right. Do you guys have any questions for the applicant?
The fire pole.
The fire pole, yes, thank you. All right, so there was a request very early on that we repurpose that pole in some way. Because it is located dead center in that space, it makes a traditional seating layout very challenging. So our plan is to repurpose it within that space. There have been a couple different thoughts. One of them is to shift the pole and keep it in the room, but kind of put it off to like in the corner where it's still visible, it's still referenced. Another has been to remove the pole itself, turn it on its side and mount it to the wall horizontally. So there have been a couple of different thoughts kind of batted around, and we will definitely address that in one way or another. But at this point, we're still talking options. It will be in the room in some aspect, though.
Will replacement of any of the original windows require reconfiguration of the existing brick at all? Or is it a like for like?
The only one that affects the brick is where we're putting that new ADA entrance, and that's just because we have to remove some brick to do that. But we're still maintaining what's left of the existing window. We're still keeping that size the same.
Great.
Anything else?
I have a couple. So with the fiberglass windows, you can't get the built-in cornice design that you have up above in the existing wood ones right now, correct? But you had said that the surrounding areas are basically pieces of wood that are put on there. So is your plan to match your existing top, if you want to go to a picture of the existing window? And Scott, you can help me out here if I'm not remembering my wood window 101 very well, but your sill and those pieces of 2x3 that are sticking out from the window or whatever they are, with the top cornice detail design there, and I take it it's fluted casing that comes all the way back down too. That can't be replicated by the fiberglass, but you're willing, can you put an overclad of wood?
That is the idea. That's what we're going to try and work with the manufacturer to.
And you could attach that to the fiberglass?
We may not be able to attach it to the fiberglass, but we will find a way to attach it somehow. That is the idea. We're working with the manufacturer to figure that out right now.
And Scott, you can also help me out here. Architecturally wise, flashing has become an exact science, at least in the last 10 years. So what kind of, with the fiberglass and with the coverage over the wood, what kind of flashing technique are you going to go? How high of a standard are you going to use? Or are you considered that the brick protects the window enough that you don't have that issue?
We are still working through all the details. We're in design development at this point, so we'll be working with a envelope consultant to.
But wouldn't a better flashing design actually help protect a wood window? That way that the lack of maintenance that the city of Milwaukee cares for its buildings can be protected that way?
Flashing will definitely help that, but it also has to do with maintaining the window itself. It's not necessarily just the flashing.
Protects against rain exposure, but not humidity, solar exposure, other environmental conditions.
Which is paint is meant to do, right?
Paint doesn't control expansion and contraction.
And are the fiberglass muttons, are they removable?
I believe you can get them so that they are. I think that's an option.
It's just easier to clean windows. Sorry, I clean windows.
No,
So. And your versatile match, the versatile wood window, did they actually, did you give them a picture and they matched the design of the wood window, or is that a stock window design?
This is part of their, it's a stock.
It's a stock window design that they have.
They felt most closely represented this.
I mean, it's gosh darn close. That's why I was.
They do a good job. I've worked with Versatile quite a bit, and they're usually pretty good at being like, okay, we can get you a product that's, as similar as possible and still a stock product.
And you can get about the same energy efficiency out of a wood window that you can pretty close with a fiberglass, can't you?
I believe modern wood windows can get pretty close.
Depends like a lot on the actual window and the condition, though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a hypothetical where
Yeah.
there's a lot of detail in speccing either one of those windows. But yeah, that's possible.
You can get a similar performance value, like in an R value or a U value, but to the point about like thermal breaks, which have a lot to do with occupant comfort and general well-being of being inside the building, I don't think it's close between fiberglass and wood.
We have a couple of samples, if you'd like to see them, that can show, and you can see that very thing, breaks.
Yeah.
Just pass them around.
So this is the Milgard wood clad, right? So this is the outside, this is the inside that shows?
And these would come painted from the manufacturer, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't have to paint, Greg, you wouldn't have to paint these in place.
Right, on the outside of the fiberglass, yeah.
Yeah.
So this one that I'm moving around here is an example of a couple homes, so this would be a scenario you can see up on the second floor window. The fixed window that carries the files is a full antique, but it's the same line as well.
And that's the versatile, right?
It is.
And would they do the brick or would they actually do a fluted, could you actually get them to build out the fluted casing and stuff?
They could match all of that. They have all the different, they have a bunch of different profiles of knives, like several hundred different profiles, and they can make custom ones if need be. So the idea would be to match. Work.
So when we make comparisons, would you be able just to get the trim from Versatile, or would you have to go to a manufacturer and have them create knives for your wood overlay?
I mean, we could definitely ask Versatile to produce that trim work. Just a separate scope.
Because in woodworking, the expense is really making the knives and so if you can get that advantage by buying a Versatile, it might actually bring your price of your window pretty close between the wood clad and the fiberglass clad and the.
A knife stop's about $600, so I think that would help our costs, but I don't know how that scale actually applies to that differential of 2,043 a window versus
4,300.
Yeah.
Except you still need to figure out how to attach wood to the fiberglass.
Yep.
And still maintain the wood.
Mm-hmm.
So maintenance still becomes an issue no matter what.
Yeah.
But not to that
right.
degree.
It's a four-piece frame rather than.
And a piece of trim is much easier to swap out if need be, if it does get damaged, as opposed to an entire window. It's kind of our line of thinking with that.
So I have a question about typical guidance from SHPO. What level of detail does it provide? Does it provide, the type of references around specific materials and all of what we've just been talking about, or is it more general type of guidance? I'm just not familiar with how they weigh in on these, and like similar buildings and similar kind of situations. What can you expect from SHPO?
That's a very good question, and I'm actually not sure the level of detail that they're going to provide for this. And it's difficult because we haven't heard back from them yet with any kind of even remote recommendations to get us started. So this was a bit of an unusual situation. Usually we go through SHPO review when a project is already on the national Register of Historic Places, but this is eligible for it. It's not on the registry. So we weren't initially aware that SHPO needed to be involved. So that was kind of a surprise for us. So we're waiting to hear what they say. But yeah, as far as the level of detail they're going to expect, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I have one last question, going a little bit off topic to the driveway in the area. Is there a need to have vehicular access at some point? Is there a reason that we're maintaining the existing driveway and not recapturing that for landscaping? Would the bollards be removable? What does this look like?
We had talked about having the bollards be removable in the event that there was a need for access to that space for, say a truck to back all the way up to it for unloading for an event or something like that. And we also discussed, let's see if we can go back to the site plan in here. It's the wrong one. Oh, sorry. Never mind. Sorry.
That's my next hearing.
Oh, sorry.
No peeking. Sorry.
No. Closed it because.
Yeah, sorry to go down the rabbit hole. I
No,
think
it's good.
the answer is probably just that it's not in this project scope. I'm just curious if, yeah.
It's a good question.
The intention initially was to allow vehicle access. It's been really helpful, if not critical, up to this point. As the garage bay serves a different function, I could definitely see that. So the initial plan was to have removable bollards. But if the garage bay being used now to store, we've got signs in there. We used to have barricades in there. We've got ladders in there.
Yeah.
We backed up there all the time. As a space such as this, that the value of having that vehicle access, I think, will drop.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the determination of removable versus permanent bollards is kind of pivotal for the future decision there.
Yeah. And you can kind of see, sorry, it's kind of a small site plan, but you can see where we're proposing to put the bollards. We've got them kind of about halfway in. The idea with that is that because right now utility vehicles will park there if they're just like running something in real quick or sometimes for loading. I've seen that happen where they just pull in a little bit. And that still gives like one vehicle enough space to actually pull in and park there while they're going to run an errand. And still provides enough safety that, let's say, you want to have an event that kind of spills out into that a little bit. You still have this ancillary area right in front of the doors that you can use without having to worry about vehicles getting in there.
Could a vehicle actually park there without blocking the sidewalk?
They do now, yeah. So.
Well, I mean, with the bollards in place?
Yeah, I mean, we can double check that and make sure that we position them so that that's not an issue. And what do you think, Damien, like the biggest vehicle?
I do. I think that's 50 feet. Like there's a significant distance between the sidewalk and the front of those doors. I agree.
Between the location of the bollards and the back of the sidewalk.
Yeah, sorry. The 50 feet I was stating between the doors and the sidewalk. So I think half of that, 25-ish. I agree with you. I would not want to see bollards
Create
so
that
close to the sidewalk
blockage.
that you couldn't place a vehicle.
Any additional questions for the applicant? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any yellow cards, so I'm assuming there's no one here to testify. So, with that said, we will close the public hearing.
May I ask a clarifying question for the city, please?
Mm-hmm.
Warren would like to make some comments, yeah.
Why aren't we waiting for the SHPO report?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Well, we submitted our materials into SHPO kind of at the same time, trying to run both of these options at the same time. I guess we were sort of hoping we would get SHPO comments sooner, but we did not, but we wanted to proceed with the hearing anyway. Certainly, we're kind of playing it both ways, that, you know, if SHPO does come back with comments that significantly alter the project, we run the risk of, you know, either having to come back with you folks or getting a decision from you and then having the applicants needing to change the scope of their project. I guess I'm sort of imagining that their comments will rest pretty significantly on those windows, similarly to the DLC comments, and the applicant knows that I think that there may be the situation where we'll be asked to go down a different path with the windows. But we were trying to kind of move the whole thing along and see where we got, but the timing didn't work out. That they're still reviewing our materials, so they could come back with something different.
Is there something time sensitive to get this hearing done and over with?
It was from a project standpoint. I think the facilities department wants to get moving on this project yesterday, I think. So the idea was to kind of keep the.
They could still do interior work, couldn't they?
Sure. Yes. For the interior?
We're going to need you to, can you come back up, please? Sorry, we can't talk in the audience.
The potential issue with working on the interior before the exterior work is resolved is that we're likely going to have to, we're tearing into walls to do a lot of that window replacement. We're also fully insulating the space. So there's going to be some things that we would like to get done with that exterior envelope prior to finishing out that interior space. So there are some things that we could do ahead of time, but we also don't want to break it up in such a way that we have to call construction crews back multiple times, because that adds up a lot. So we'd really like to get everything resolved and ready to go at one time.
Contractually, our procurement department requires a very high degree of specificity for what we're doing and what it's going to cost. So we don't build in slop generally.
Yeah. So how many more days does SHPO have to respond?
Next week, they're supposed to be coming back with
So on November 13th, we could have the SHPO response?
Hopefully. That they should be yes.
Required, right? I mean, it's
they're
30 days
required.
from,
yes.
Okay.
30 days, so it's been 3 weeks since you've.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. The public testimony portion of this hearing on file HR-2018-001 is
Chair
now.
Travis,
Yes.
I believe that Lauren would actually like to come back up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So I skipped over that. Does anyone have any rebuttal? Is that what this is? This is a rebuttal comment? Okay.
So the DLC had kind of a chance to review the sections of glazing that we saw, and I still have concern about the comparison of the original condition and the proposed fiberglass condition being fairly significantly off from that historical profile of the existing windows. And so we're just expressing concern that has enough research gone into alternatives that could get us closer. We recognizing there is a comparable difference to the energy efficiency and the life cycle analysis that you could do on a fiberglass window versus a wood window, and we recognize that's a significant benefit, particularly for maintenance, but still feeling as though fiberglass alternates can get you closer to that original profile, and we're interested in seeing what alternates might be able to get you, and curious to see if the design team has gone down the road of looking at other manufacturers or even working with manufacturers not for stock product but for custom product to get us closer yet. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and close the public testimony portion of this hearing. File HR-2018-001. And are you guys ready to discuss this?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Everybody looks to me. So here's the deal. I think that the DLC and Ms. Luzavelle has made an excellent job and an excellent claim. And I find it that we should wait until we get the SHPO response. And I think we should delay the hearing until November 13th. It seems like to me that it's going to be, the city is actually asking us to kind of write a loosey-goosey amendment so that basically what you're saying is that when the SHPO decision comes in, that, we can go either way.
Right.
I don't see 2 weeks in waiting to hear it, and we don't even have to, I guess we have to probably reopen the public testimony once the SHPO comes in, but it's a half-hour hearing, there isn't going to be much presentation. We're just going to be discussing the windows probably, and I don't see any reason to try to make a decision without a major document that's needed.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of having just this really kind of catch-all condition that could take this kind of anywhere that we're not familiar with, and without the advice from the Design and Landmarks Committee. I think that they deserve an opportunity to see what comes back from SHPO and to make another recommendation to us about their perception of how that feedback actually from SHPO is feasible, and then help us fashion a condition of approval around these windows, which does seem to be a pretty important topic for them. So I'd like to be cognizant of that and give them an opportunity to review what the state has to say about this.
Anyone have any opposite feelings? Ready to move forward tonight? Or are we all kind of thinking that...
I would move forward.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think just in the interest of saving staff time and efficiency, we could craft a condition that would say, move forward as is pending SHPO recommendations. And I don't know, I'm sure staff came in here thinking that they would be able to help us craft a condition around this, and
I'm curious to know, I guess maybe I should have asked this as a clarifying question, but maybe the city can answer. Again, certainly appreciate timeline and cost considerations of the fiberglass versus the wood windows, but also having worked with SHPO before, I can just say that, would you be ordering the windows, and then if SHPO comes back and is like, oh, hey, no, those aren't, we didn't approve those, or, those aren't nearly the same as what we're looking for. I mean, I guess I would just be kind of cautious regarding that, and I think probably I would, a couple weeks would give the design team a little bit more time to explore design options per the DLC's recommendation. And so I think I would probably I'd probably wait for SHPO's consideration as well.
I mean, the work can't proceed until SHPO gets back anyway. So there's a delay in time and schedule and waiting for that.
Right.
So what would be the harm in voting today with a finding that says, assuming, the finding would, how to do this, that, the condition, not the finding, but the condition would be that we approve with the condition that SHPO does not object to the proposed fiberglass windows, and
And then they have to come back.
So the city is asking us to take a gamble that SHPO will accept.
Well,
We've already spent the time, we're here.
I think what the city is going to ask is that we just automatically take SHPO's response as what needs to be done.
I'm comfortable with that.
But we're not obligated to actually do what SHPO recommends, correct?
We're not up, I mean,
I'm not sure how they're going to word their recommendations. I don't know what they're going to say or how they will say it. So,
But we are not obligated to take their recommendation and verbatim, correct?
yeah, as far as I know, I mean,
so.
having limited experience with SHPO, I don't think that you're statutorily required to go with whatever they say.
So what I would like is, I would like to see their recommendation. We know that the DLC prefers the wood. The applicant's argument is energy efficiency and their lack of maintaining building or having pride in their buildings. So I would like to see what SHPO has to say before we try to even guess or hazard or move forward.
Commissioner Jones.
Commissioner Argo was about to say
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's hard for me to commit either way to thinking there's I haven't been convinced there's an expediency need, and I also haven't been convinced that going forward with the provision of accepting SHPO's report is actually, I don't feel like we're taking a risk by conditioning that either. I am completely neutral here. I don't have a dog. I don't think it's going to be consequential either way.
I'm struggling a little bit to craft a compelling argument here. I know how I feel, that I think we should approve this with the condition of, with some conditioning of the SHPO report. In my experience with that, there is limited enforceability. Anything that gets installed new is going to have some discrepancy from original and existing through the multiple iterations of windows that exist in this building. I think that the design team has gone to an extensive effort to find an option that matches. Is that every option that exists in the world? Probably not. There may be something out there that's closer, that meets the energy efficiency and cost efficiency and maintenance efficiency and lifespan requirements that the city is looking for from an O&M standpoint. So I'm struggling a little bit. I respect, I guess, the pain in a 2-week setback in the design process, and understand that there are real dollar costs associated with that would come back to the city. It's not just a flippant, not implying that it's flippant, but it's not just a decision that like everybody just goes away and we come back 2 weeks later. There is a cost involved. But as far as why we should not wait for the SHPO report, that's where I'm a little bit hung up, because I do see the value of it, and I do wish that in a perfect world, blue sky condition, we would have that report in front of us right now. And again, my experience is that it would probably align with what the design team is already looking at, and so there is a risk associated in delaying this 2 weeks only to have the finding come back as, yeah, you're good. On top of that, I do appreciate the work that the DLC has put into this and think that there's a great effort. And maintaining historical continuity and historical significance in the areas that we can find it, and this is one area that we can find it in the city. So that's, I'm not downplaying that significance at all. Just trying to take a real world approach to this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say again that, with basically what, along the lines of what Jones was saying, Commissioner Jones was saying, I think that philosophically speaking, the Design and Landmarks Committee, serves a role, and we're the review authority, so the decision lies with us, but I would really like to give them the opportunity to review what SHPO, comes back with, and, either if they don't have the opportunity to meet, and forward a recommendation, and at least they'd have the opportunity as individuals to review it and come in and testify at our next, hearing, our continued hearing on this. And so we could continue, we could at least get some feedback from, those committee members if they are, interested in doing so, which I bet they are, given the, the interest in the windows thus far. And so I think that it would be appropriate for us to seek that feedback from the committee that is, responsible for historic landmarks in the city. And so I'm I don't want to just write a blank check, for the city and, to just take whatever the State Historic Preservation Office sends back and, just roll with it. I think that there's an opportunity for the DLC to, either work with the applicant or work, at least review the state's, advice or recommendation, and then come back to us at our next hearing with, something more than just disagreement, about what should be in place. The applicant wants, what they're proposing, the DLC wants, wood. There's a happy medium in there. And I think that, knowing, what the state has to say about it will inform that committee to the point that they could come back with, a revised proposal, some kind of a compromise, that maybe with some specific recommendations that we could apply as conditions that would, really, meet the spirit of what it is that they're trying to accomplish, while also recognizing the O&M, concerns for the city and everything. So I really encourage us to take that course in this case.
Yes, Vera.
If I could just, as a slight correction, Lauren just pointed this out, that the DLC is not necessarily pushing for solely wood windows, but more that there are other options for the fiberglass windows that better match the original windows. So it's not just the material itself that the windows are made of, but the design of the windows as well. Okay, so.
Okay.
Just wanted to make that clarification that it's not,
Okay.
they're not just for wood windows.
Right.
There's,
Okay. So do we think, is this something that SHPO will be providing guidance on? That level of, that detail, the design of the windows? Yes.
so.
Okay.
I think they will.
They will. Okay. Yeah, well, I agree with Commissioner Edge's comments. I think in particular when we have a group that is working hard on a mission that is chartered by the city for them to do, that it's respectful and it's appropriate to kind of follow process and timeline associated with all of the information related to this particular topic. So I'm inclined to extend the hearing. That's the right, yeah. Continue the hearing. Mm-hmm.
And reopen public.
And reopen public comment. Yeah, sorry.
I take it that we're representing Lauren's feedback correctly, but I'm just a little bit confused on the process. So we had Vera and Lauren together, both representing the city, but one asking us to move forward and one asking us to stand back. And I just am a little bit, I didn't understand that was what was happening during the testimony, and I'm just a little confused by the process there, and if it might be, would have been better if we're being asked to delay by one representative of the city and move forward by another representative of the city, if that would have been more clearly handled as testimony in opposition.
Well, Lauren's representing the DLC.
then would that not have been testimony rather than
Okay.
the applicant or the city?
And I know, but in
Staff, it was part of the staff presentation.
In the past, because it's awkward, it's like we as planning commissioners can't go sit in front of city council after something we've done because it's kind of awkward. It's the same sort of thing. So in the past, we have asked the DLC to come up with and be part of the
So it was
staff
a
presentation.
split recommendation from staff in this case that.
Well, I think from staff, staff's recommendations, as far as, Vera's recommendation was based on the approval criteria, which if you look at, obviously the preference is for wood windows where possible to maintain those, but staff in looking at those approval criteria can say that you can point to those and say that we can still recommend approval based on that because the applicant has made an effort to, match the design as much as possible. The DLC in their advisory role then, ignoring what the best format for providing that comment was, they're providing their advice based on their advisory role.
Thank you for clarifying that. It makes sense.
So if we're going to, I have two other points that I'd like to bring up, and one is I'd like some sort of, if you're going to put the fire pole up against the wall or move it into a corner, that the design would also include an explanation of what that fire pole is and why it's there. So maybe an old picture of the fire truck in front of the bay with the bay door open with a interpretive sign would be nice, so that historic resource is remembered instead of what's that brass thing sitting on the wall or what other people think of brass poles for. And the other thing is the ballards. I really want you to think about this. That is, especially during the tree lighting event, that is a huge usable space as a plaza. It gets used a lot that way when there are major speeches or major events that are outside, sponsored by the city. It is used at that plaza. I think that there's plenty of parking in front, and you're not using that as a loading dock anymore. My suggestion would be is to move the ballards into the edge of the right-of-way instead of having them right smack dab in the middle, because now you're limiting yourself to be plaza-oriented, or now it can't be really used as a plaza because they become a hazard, or at least if you're going to put them in the middle of the driveway, that they should be removable. So hopefully we're going to extend the hearing, and maybe my concerns can be addressed at the next presentation.
So, sorry to come back to this. Just one final clarifying question from me, because I don't think I'm understanding accurately why we don't have the SHPO report today. Is that because the applicant did not provide the information in the timeline that was set out in their preliminary requirement out? Like, what? I'm trying to understand why we don't have that.
The city submits the SHPO information, so we submitted the application. We did not think we had to because the building is not listed on the National Registry. Denny did not, he read the ORS and did not believe that it was necessary. And then we spoke with SHPO several times at length, and he was convinced and told that we needed to submit, so we did, but they take a full 30 days to do their review, and we were already in this process. So we decided to go forward with the hearing to at least get this discussion out, but we were hoping they would get
Sure.
us comments back, but they won't be back till next week.
But the applicant had provided their information as required.
Oh, sure, yeah.
In the time frame.
Yeah, and I submitted everything based on their application materials and then submitted their revised materials as well. So, yeah, yeah. No, they assured me they would not. So, yeah.
So just the purpose of that clarification is that the burden of the delay is shifted to the applicant due to, for lack of a better term, an omission or an oversight from the city. It's just my clarification.
Okay.
Yeah, but the applicant is the city.
Right.
Okay.
Is it time for a motion?
I would entertain something right now, so.
In recognition of Commissioner Edge and Commissioner Hemer's, eloquent explanation of why it makes sense to wait and let SHPO hear and let DLC respond to that, I'll make a motion to extend the hearing.
Okay.
I'll second that. And I appreciate you relating that we need to utilize DLC's work in the spirit of what they're commissioned to do.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, we've had a motion, we had a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay,
So just to clarify, we're making that to a date certain of November 13th?
yes, thank you for clarifying that. We will extend the hearing, wait, what's the?
Continue.
sorry, Continue the hearing, sorry, on November 13th. Thank you. Okay. If anyone wishes to appeal this decision to City Council, you must make an application stating the grounds of your appeal within 15 days of the mailing notice. That's not it. Okay. All right. That's that. Moving on. Lost my agenda. Thank you, everyone. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Okay. So now we're going to type 5. Next is public hearing on file ZA-2018-005. It's called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider legislative amendments to the City of Milwaukee Municipal Code. I will recognize those persons who have completed the testimony cards and given them to me. When you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record so they may be entered into the minutes. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria and to avoid repetition and irrelevant information. Commissioner participation. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest?
No.
No.
Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain?
No.
Let's proceed to the staff report presentation.
Good evening, Vera Coles, Associate Planner, here to present the staff report for this code amendment. Be back on November 13th with more code amendments. This is a very limited set of proposed amendments relating to public recreational trails and pathways. This issue was discovered during preliminary review of the proposed improvements at Kronberg Park, which include a multi-use pathway and calls for a 12-foot wide pathway per ODOT design standards for multi-use trails. The current code would require both a Type 3 Greenway review and a Type 3 Natural Resources review for the proposed path. And it made us take a look at the code to see if is that an appropriate review process for the Kronberg Park and sort of opening it up to a bigger context of public recreational pathways and trails. The proposed amendments would exempt those kinds of trails from a Type 3 Greenway review if they are located more than 150 feet away from the top of the riverbank. The amendments would also increase the maximum width of a trail or path under a Type 2 review. So a Type 2 Natural Resources review allows multi-use paths up to 10 feet in width. Under Type 2, we're proposing to increase that to 12 feet to account for ODOT standards. The 10-foot was the ODOT standard for multi-use path at the time. It's now 12, is our understanding from the engineering director. And so we would like to account for that within the code.
The change, or the amendments, we believe are minor and do not reflect a significant change in policy. So that sort of summarizes the code amendments. Again, it's a very narrowly focused package of code amendments, unlike the next round when I come back. But the key issue that we identified for discussion for the Planning Commission is specific to Goal 15, the Willamette Greenway goal, and dealing with the definitions of change of use and intensification within the code. And is that consistent with Goal 15? Goal 15 is focused on the Willamette River, applies to cities and counties along the river. The proposal, again, includes construction and maintenance of trails up to 10 feet in width, or 12 feet in width, setback at least 150 feet from the river. And we're proposing to include those kinds of activities in the list of uses or activities that are not considered a change of use or intensification. We're including a new definition of what we're calling a low-impact path or trail. It's very specific, up to 12 feet, made of permeable material, and those kinds of trails would not be considered a change of use or intensification. We believe that those then allow for the development of those kinds of public recreational trails and pathways while still protecting the natural qualities of the greenway itself and meeting recreational objectives, all of which are part of Goal 15 for the Willamette Greenway. Provides adequate width for walking and biking, still having a minimal impact on the riparian area because we've included this buffer from the riverbank to make sure that these kinds of paths are away from the river. Several activities that are currently exempt in the our current code, as well as Goal 15 itself, include construction of paved driveways, installation of structures associated with residential development. There are a lot of exempt activities in the goal right now that have to do with residential development and residential use of properties close to the river. But those don't provide a public recreational benefit. So we would argue that including these kinds of public trails and paths within public parks in the Greenway is consistent with the type of recreational use that is expected to occur in parks. Again, we're including a definition for a low-impact pathway. It's an at-grade public recreational trail or walkway located a minimum of 150 feet from the Willamette Riverbank, constructed permeable material up to 12 feet in width. So it's a very narrowly focused kind of path and a focused location for the path as well. This drawing shows a portion of the city. The green hatching is the Willamette Greenway. I've circled where the Kronberg Park Trail is, so you can get a sense of what has been captured within the Willamette Greenway. It's on the other side of McLaughlin. And then the heavy red line, not the circle around Kronberg, but the heavy red line indicates roughly the 150-foot kind of line or the buffer. So we're well outside of the riverbank of the river. There are structures and all kinds of things within that 150 feet, but beyond that is where we would like to exempt public pathways and trails from having to go through the Type 3 Greenway review. Anything that happens on the inside of that, you'll note that in Milwaukee Bay Park, those pathways would all, if those were being proposed new, or any of that work for trails or pathways would all be subject to the Type 3 Greenway review. We still believe that that ought to happen, certainly to be able to make sure that we're maintaining public access and views to and from the river for any kind of that development. But this kind of a public recreational path under these specific circumstances, we think can be found to be consistent with Goal 15 and is not derogating from the purpose of the Greenway itself or from Goal 15 as well. We did get some comments from DLCD early on. Our original proposal was to actually include this kind of a pathway in the list of exempt activities. Within the code, we have a list of things that don't have to go through Type 3. They came back with comments saying that the intent of allowing development and improvement of public trails fits easily within the intent of Goal 15. and exempting those trails of review does not if they are considered an intensification or a change of use. So they came back with comments adding to that, saying that the city should look at definitions of intensification or change in use to justify a local clarification for that construction. So we took a different tack. We end up in the same place where we are able to exempt the activity, but by doing it through making sure by clearly defining that we do not consider, or the code does not consider this kind of activity an intensification or a change of use as it relates to the Willamette Greenway. So we think that we've addressed their comments pretty much exactly the way they came back to us in the email. But that was the only comment that we received. Our recommendation is approval of the application, is to recommend approval and recommend approval of the findings to City Council, where we're scheduled on November 20th. You do have options, of course, to recommend approval with modified findings. You could recommend denial, or you could certainly continue the hearing if you need more information from staff. But again, at this point, we're tentatively scheduled to be at the City Council for a hearing on November 20th, if you so choose to recommend approval of our application. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Vera?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Could you go back to the slide that shows what reviews would be required under proposed?
This is specific to the Kronberg Park Trail, though.
Right.
Okay, got it.
And so the natural resource review is because of the proximity to Kellogg Lake. Is that correct?
The review, the natural resources review is because the trail is 12 feet wide. The current code would require a 12-foot wide path to be under Type 3 natural resources review. It only allows a 10-foot wide path to be Type 2. It would be subject to Willamette Greenway review because it's in the Willamette Greenway, the way the Greenway is mapped.
Right, so which natural resource overlay is applicable there?
It's in the, we exempt recreational trails within water quality resource areas up to 10 feet in width right now, or under Type 2 review. Otherwise, if it's wider, it goes to Type 3, but it's the water quality resource area.
So what would be the implications of of maintaining the Willamette Greenway review, but having it be a Type 2 procedure?
A Type 2 Willamette Greenway review or a Type 3?
Yeah.
There, we don't have.
You can't have, okay, that's what I was wondering.
Exempt or it's a Type 3.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, thank you.
Sorry for the roundabout answer there, apologies.
So I want to make sure that my logic is correct, right? So a Type 3 review means that people within 300 feet get notified, and it goes out to the neighborhood for public comment, and it comes to the Planning Commission, correct?
Correct.
Type 2 means that it's just a high director level, correct?
There's public, the 300-foot notification to abutters. The neighborhood association gets a referral of that application as well. It is a planning director's decision, and it would not come to the Planning Commission, but the notification is the same.
So I worry about goal 1. And what I really worry about is that these should have master plans that they've already gone through in these park areas or these natural resource for Kronberg Park, let's just say. And what I worry about is that you allow a 12-foot path to go in without really any public review. Even though that, yes, you give the 300-foot notice and the neighborhood gets it, but it doesn't go out to the general public, which these parks, especially Kronberg, is meant for the general public to use as well. So,
if I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
No.
The Kronberg Park has a master plan that has gone through the master plan process.
without a 12-foot path.
Right, with a 10.
So you're just avoiding redoing the master plan.
No, we're not avoiding it. I mean, we would go through a Type 3 review if necessary.
Right, you go through a Type 3 review. And so that is...
The path is in the master
I just want to make sure that my logic was correct, that we're limiting the amount of public input, especially on the Willamette Greenway, for anybody that wants to put in a 12-foot path, so which would be our high recreation area. So I just want to make sure my logic was correct. Thank you.
From a Greenway, for the Greenway standpoint, yes. The Kronberg Park Trail will still be posting a sign at the location. Again, neighborhood review, 300-foot abutter review, all of that would still occur for the Type 2 natural resources review, yes.
Are you going to put a sign in the middle of the park?
We'll probably put a couple of signs in the location so that people know that there's a hearing.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else for Vera? Any other questions?
I have one more question. What is the basis for the 150-foot rule from the river?
We're looking at the map. We are also thinking about, riverbank and what is already within that 150 feet. We wanted to make sure that we were still capturing pathways within Milwaukee Bay Park, as an example. And when we were looking at what's already in that 150-foot, that 150-foot is also a number that is used in, I want to say it is in Goal 15, but I'd have to adjust.
I do. I see it now.
Yeah. So it's the kind of number that has been used before and is used in that goal, but it gets us outside of that riverbank area, but still maintains where it doesn't look like we're trying to get out of any review for anything on public property, as an example, for anything like that. So we're trying to kind of cut it both ways, I guess.
So that 150 feet is the absolute minimum required by Goal 15, and then our overlay zone actually extends out beyond that?
Well beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 150-foot rule would exclude a lot of Kellogg Lake from
Greenway review.
From Greenway review.
Yes. And Greenway review, again, is very specific to public access and views to and from the Willamette River. But because so much of that area is water quality resource area and habitat conservation area, it would get captured certainly in the natural resources review.
Yeah, it's not just recreation and scenic. It's, the first quality that it lists is natural. And the last is recreational. Not that those are ranked necessarily, but they're also not presented in alphabetical order. So
right.
There is it can be inferred that there is a reason for the sequence as presented. And Kellogg Lake, although it may be blocked off from the river by a dam, is a natural floodplain of the Willamette River.
Yep.
And that is probably the logic that went into designing the boundaries of the Greenway in 1975 or whenever that was adopted by the city. And so I would be hesitant to exclude portions of Kellogg Lake that are more than 150 feet away from the river from Greenway review, because it is a functional part of the Greenway. Oh, we're having a hearing, not a work session, right? Guess I'm getting into deliberations, perhaps.
So do we need to make any amendments based on that comment to this proposed code? Or
We have to go into deliberations, and then I think we can come up with that.
Can I ask
forgot where we were.
Can I ask one, is the entire Kronberg Park owned by the city? Is there some parts owned by the county? Because the report says the city owns nearly all
I believe so.
There's a reason I'm asking. If it's possible that ODOT owns any of this, then I have to recuse myself, probably, because I am an employee of ODOT. But I don't think they own any.
Can I answer that question? I believe that ODOT only owns land north, so the northwesterly of the rail crossing.
Okay. I do know that spot you're talking about. Okay.
Which I do not believe is considered part of the park.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments for Vera before we go into deliberation?
Could you leave it on that? Thank you. That's
Okay. Thanks. All right. And we don't have any yellow cards, so we have no testimony. So we'll go ahead and close the hearing. The public testimony portion of this hearing on file ZA-2018-005 is now closed. Is the commission ready for discussion?
Yes.
I'd like to have Commissioner Edge expand on his questioning earlier and give the thought process behind it.
The Willamette Greenway was instituted as Goal 15 state land use goals back in 1975. It's here in our packet. It explains what the goal is, and it's easily and quickly summarized as to protect, conserve, enhance, and maintain the natural, scenic, historical, agricultural, economic, and recreational qualities of lands along the Willamette River as the Willamette River Greenway. So the part of a functioning river system, which the Willamette River is floodplains and little arms of floodplain that might dry up or during the warm season and then fill in during the wet season. And historically, Kellogg Lake performed that function. Now we're going back to over 150 years ago because the dam was put in about that long ago. But nonetheless, that's the natural function of that body of water, is to provide flood storage for the Willamette River, and therefore it is part of the Willamette River and should logically be considered part of the Willamette River Greenway if we're looking at protecting and conserving the natural qualities of the river. And so although it is cut off by McLaughlin Boulevard, which has the dam built in to it, and right now it takes a pretty substantial amount of water on the riverside for it to get up and over that barrier. That dam will come out at some point. It is a prerogative of the city to remove that dam, and so it makes sense to continue protecting that arm of floodplain that is connected to the Willamette River with the same greenway protections that we would expect on the river itself.
Okay, but I don't think, everybody help me if I'm not understanding this correct. This only has to do with trails. That only trails from 150 feet from a Willamette Greenway, not anything else.
Oh, so am I missing that? Is the 150?
I think the language is specific to trails only.
It's specific to low-impact pathways.
Low-impact pathways.
As we've defined it, that those would not be considered intensification or change of use. Therefore, they would be exempt from a Type 3 Willamette Greenway review.
And so that's what gets into the exempt. It doesn't actually move the Willamette Greenway line?
No, not at all.
Right. It's trails from 150 feet away.
Specifically trails.
Yes.
Specifically trails.
Specifically low-impact pathways.
Right, so there's two parts. The two parts are basically, hey, change the code from 10 feet to 12 feet to meet the new standard.
Right.
And then the second part is that we'll only review it for 150 feet away from the Willamette Greenway. Or
from the river.
Provided that certain conditions are met as far as the trail design.
That's right. Permeable pavement, public recreational pathway. It's in the underlined strikeout code section. It should be in the last part, Exhibit B. But low-impact pathways. At-grade public recreational trails located minimum of 150 feet. Constructive permeable material up to 12 feet in width. That's the only thing that we're suggesting would be exempt from Willamette Greenway.
It's very narrow then.
very narrow, but
well, it's 12 feet, but it's sorry.
But let's take the example that if the dam does go away, and you want to put a nature path down by the creek, or what would be the creek, there would be little public required discussion except people 300 feet away and an NDA. There would be no public hearing about that.
Right, yeah, it does change. If you're going to, so specifically, you're going to build a trail that's permeable and, supposedly low impact on the natural, as far as the natural qualities, then yes, we would be looking at not having at least a hearing.
Right, you wouldn't have a hearing, or you could spider off the trail and create a bunch of trails inside Kronberg Park without actually doing a master plan, or with limited public comment.
You don't think removal of the dam and that major shift would cause a...
No, I'm sorry. You could put a path anywhere you want in Kronberg. So even the path that they are currently talking about, you could spider that off any which way you wanted, with limited public comment and without a public hearing.
The issue of parks master plans isn't, I don't see how that's germane to Housekeeping Code amendment.
It's because the park master plan is supposed to be the writing document on how a park is created. This is a park, and
this is about the changing the definition of intensification of use,
or allowing any sort of path that somebody wants to design to put in without going through a full public process.
But Vera,
type 2 is a full public process. It's just a different process.
Okay.
Would it? Sorry, go ahead.
Just that to Commissioner Hemer's point, that a significant deviation from the approved master plan for Kronberg Park would require a public process.
Yeah.
And would it also require a habitat conservation area?
All of the natural resources
all of that
stuff would still apply,
okay,
to that. But the master plan aspect specifically, they would need to come back if they were looking to do something. The Milwaukee Bay Park is doing that right now, so the Kronberg Park would do a very similar kind of process. They would need to come back if they were making a lot of changes to the approved master plan.
But they could do one path at a time.
That we would have to determine what's happening and how different is it, and the planning director, I think, would determine if we're going to circle back and do this, start over, or introduce this as a hearing process to make sure that we're still consistent with the master plan.
Okay. All right, so your concern is about public involvement.
Yeah, basically you're taking away a public involvement process for one particular item.
For the change in intensification.
Correct.
As long as it's compatible with the master plan.
It doesn't say that. Now, I would be happy to add that in. That would make me very happy if we could add in a statement that says a path as long as it's compatible with the master plan. I could deal with that.
What that seems subjective.
No, it doesn't. You have a master plan that has pathways in it, right? That's already gone through a public process.
Aren't there other parts of the code that talk about the requirements to follow the master plan or issue a new master plan if you're deviating from it? That's what I just heard from Vera.
Yeah, if 12 feet has become the new standard, I would, 12 feet versus 10 feet, that's called out in it.
This is not the argument. It's not the argument. The argument is the 150-foot line, and whether or not you will allow an exemption or you change, Oh, the exemption is only for the width of the path.
It's only for the Willamette Greenway review piece of it, yeah.
Right, all right, I'm getting confused.
So I think in terms of the master plan, as I would understand it, if we wanted to put a 12-foot wide path in Century Park or North Clackamas Park or any other park, that Kronberg Park would follow those same rules as any other park would apply, which would be if there's a natural resource, it's type 2, otherwise you can just put the path in as long as it's consistent with the master plan. And then Given that these are specifically permeable paths, I really appreciated Commissioner Edge's, calling out the specifics of the order in the Willamette Greenway Code of Natural Resources, yada, yada, then recreation, and I thought that was very insightful. I think it's a very good balance between the natural resource and the recreation that we're specifically talking about permeable paths. We know it has to be consistent with the master plan. The difference from 10 foot to 12 foot wide I'm super comfortable with that because it aligns with the ODOT standard and it's a nice, useful, balance of the recreational opportunities. So I really don't see anything objectionable about this. It's a great balance and an alignment of Milwaukee and ODOT, and it's sufficient for me.
Yeah, we are amending it to add the word permeable and to modify the maximum width of 10 feet to 12 feet. And so adding permeable is a big win.
Right.
Yes.
That's a big win. And then changing it to 12 feet is just making it consistent with what the ODOT requirements are now.
Actually, also, that's national AASHTO practice too. ODOT wanted to follow that. That's why they.
Yeah. 15 feet would be even better, but.
It'd be the best.
Okay.
But then, so it was.
But we're still putting in a path from a type 3 to a type 2.
No, a 10-foot wide path would already be type 2. Now a 12-foot wide path will be type 2. So all.
Okay.
So all it is they can be 2 feet wider and then stay in the type 2 track.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good enough.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
It's a tough clarification.
Yeah.
All right. So, are we ready for a motion on this? Or do we need more discussion here? Are we feeling comfortable? Okay. All right. Somebody motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept, I hate this, to recommend to City Council approval of application ZA 2018-005 and adoption of the recommended findings and approval found in attachment 2.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Good reading.
Well, normally
Thank
it's
you.
the first line.
This decision is a recommendation to the City Council, which will make the final decision after a public hearing. Please see planning staff for details concerning the City Council hearing date and process. Excellent. Okay. Ready for our work session items. We've already been working so hard.
I know. Do you guys want a couple-minute break?
We're gonna,
Take 5.
5-minute break. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this really quick on both of these unless you guys object, so.
Okay. Just take a quick break. We'll be right back. Okay.
I
keep meaning to reach out to.
It's all about growth.
So right now, it's all a bunch of new subdivisions going in the Frog Pond area, right next to where I work.
Yeah, but you know what gets me is that Wilsonville area, even if you work downtown, your traffic choice is a nightmare.
Yeah, I used to live down, when we first moved back from North Carolina, I lived in the Pearl District, and so it was, if you leave at 9:15, you were able to wait a little bit, and plus it was 2012, and so traffic was low from the recession and still lingering.
Right. You never know.
So it was 30 minutes. And it
Okay.
actually turned into 75.
So, I guess it's time to work. Some more other work session items. David?
It is. Thank you, Chair Travis. David Levitan, Senior Planner. As I mentioned, I'm going to keep this brief, and just I would welcome Chair Travis and any other planning commissioners to weigh in with their input. I appreciate, all of you staying pretty involved with the comprehensive plan. Special appreciation to our planning commissioners that attended last week and provided emergency note-taker duties. We ended up with a couple last-minute cancellations from advisory committee members and staff members, so we appreciate Greg and Joseph.
Joseph got to be the facilitator. Yeah. Denny got to be his scribe.
Oh, wow. Denny wouldn't take over the facilitating.
No, I bargained with him.
I was too busy chasing 3-year-olds around the room to really realize that. So, but anyways, I just wanted to touch on a few things related to that town hall last week, October 15th. We were really pleased with the turnout again. We had about 100 people there in addition to all of the staff members and consultants, committee members. And so we've kind of looked through the feedback on that. We've gotten pretty good feedback as far as we did a meeting evaluation. We had a number of the attendees fill out comment forms on that. And so we really have been pouring through that over the last few weeks. We'll be kind of developing some kind of policies for the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, the CPAC, to go through at their next meeting, which is scheduled for November 5th. So unfortunately, it conflicts with the DLC again, but we look forward to really starting to really get into the meat of the policy language. So that next meeting of the CPAC is on November 5th. Our online open house was slated to finish tomorrow. October 24th, we've made a decision to extend that to the 28th, just to give people a little bit of additional opportunity. So that's now open until Sunday. We would encourage everyone to fill that out. We've gotten about 120 or 130 responses so far, which we'd like to get more, and we're going to do an additional round of outreach related to that. But people have been spending an average of 5 or 6 minutes on that, so it's not that they're just coming in and answering one question. They're actually coming in and spending time on it. And from our consultants, they said that typically on these online open houses, the average is about 3 minutes. So at least, I think the presence of graphics and the way that the questions are formatted is indicative of that. We've done a relatively good job as far as engaging people and keeping it as fresh and light as you can when you're talking about natural hazards and Willamette Greenway on a online open house. So that kind of covers the CPAC and the online open house. A couple other things just to touch on. We're also continue to work on the neighborhood hubs concept that came out of the community vision. We had a really great response to that online survey. We got about 300 people that responded to that. I think it's just something that's really, that the community has latched onto and is largely supportive of, that they'd like to have more places that they can walk and bike to within their neighborhoods. So we're continuing to refine the hub locations and develop some general hub typologies, which then we'll be using to do a kind of an economic market analysis to look at things like, well, what type of density would you need to support additional commercial uses within primarily single-family residential neighborhoods. So we're working with our consultants on that right now. We hope to kind of dovetail the neighborhood hubs work with the housing work, just because I think they're largely interrelated, especially as it relates to the discussion discussion of missing middle housing and kind of incremental increases in density in certain kind of appropriate locations. And so we had offset the housing work from the Block 2 work. We had initially planned on having kind of the initial housing forum in November. I think I had initially sent that out to all of you. That's now been, that kind of community housing forum has been pushed back to December 6th. I didn't speak to Valeria or to Alma today, but I believe that's been confirmed for Clackamas Community College. We were looking at some additional locations, but I believe that it's going to be in their kind of new open space there at the Harmony campus. So we're really kind of looking at the month of December to really launch the housing discussion. We have that event on December 6th. Then there's going to be a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the City Council the following Tuesday on December 11th. So really kind of before we get you into your holiday break, we're really going to work you on the housing side of things. We really want to get that discussion going because it's obviously going to be something of high importance. We've obviously spent a lot of time on the housing affordability strategy. We have a number of grants right now. We have a grant from DLCD to kind of look at equitable housing policies. We have a grant from Metro looking at cottage cluster development and how to make potentially amend our code. And so that's kind of a lot of these projects moving concurrently. We are required under House Bill 4006. Is it 4006 for rent as a severely rent burdened community? We're required to hold a public meeting by the end of the year. So we're kind of having some discussions as to whether we're going to hold that at the same time as the Community Housing Forum on December 6th, or maybe have that as a separate meeting. We're still kind of working through those details, but there's going to be a lot of things related to housing going on in December, and that's really when we plan on launching that discussion with the CPAC as well. So I think that's kind of the bulk of what I had for you tonight. Just looking at your calendar, we welcome you to attend the November 5th CPAC meeting. I know that some of you have attended in the past. I know it conflicts with the DLC, but that'll be in a little less than 2 weeks. We plan on coming back on November 13th to give a little bit more detail on the policy work. We'll do another work session with the Planning Commission at that point. By then, we'll have some kind of preliminary policy language that comes out of that November 5th meeting with the CPAC. And so we'd like to get, kind of a cyclical relationship between the CPAC and the Planning Commission, have the CPAC develop some language, kind of run it by the Planning Commission, see additional topics that maybe need to be touched upon so that we can bring that back to the CPAC in December, their next meeting being December 3rd. So we really, are looking to take advantage of your interest and your expertise in a variety of different fields related to housing. And so with that, I'd open it up to any questions or any comments from Chair Travis or anyone else that has been involved.
I have a question. Can we get the Community Development Director maybe to come in and kind of do a run through on kind of the list here that you have regarding the initiatives the city is involved in regarding housing, just to kind of familiarize ourselves with what's going on?
Yeah, we can do that. And I mean, we could
great.
probably do that as soon as, if we're coming on November 13th, I can check with Alma to see if she's available. If
Yeah.
we can provide kind of a brief update as part of the comp plan work session.
That'd be great.
And my only thing, I went to go take the survey today, and I know that there was problems, at least, I don't know, I saw on Facebook that there were problems with the city website for some people, but I got halfway through and hit a submit button, and then I couldn't get into the climate action survey or what about you section, where I'm assuming you fill in the information about yourself. I couldn't, and I went back to it, and still didn't, it either registered my phone or I never typed in an email address or anything, so.
Okay, well, I can check with.
Just check to
consultants
see if
on
it's
that.
still working or
Yeah,
not. Maybe they were trying to extend out the date while I was trying to hit it, or.
Yeah, the
never
hyperlink
know.
issue, the direct links that went out and the people that are on the email list for the comp plan project, took about 500 people. The hyperlink that was included in the email and the hyperlink that was included on the social media post was correct, but somehow the hyperlink that was embedded into the project website had an additional space, which was screwing up the link. And so I know that Council President Beatty pointed that out as well to me. And so I think that we got that fixed. By the end of the day, I had clicked on it and I sent it out to a variety of people. And so hopefully we've resolved that issue.
Yeah, like I said, I got halfway through it and I clicked a red submit button. You know, you did the first section. I'm assuming then you'd hit submit, then you were allowed to do the rest, but.
And I'm trying to think what time did you take it at?
It was like 3:50 or 3:30 or.
Yeah, I'm hoping that, I provided some direction to the consultants to switch up the order to bring the climate action stuff to the front, just because we were seeing a little bit of survey fatigue, that more people were answering the Parks and Recreation questions. And so I don't know if maybe you got in there.
Maybe I got right in there while they were trying to
when
fix
they were
it.
doing
That could
that,
happen.
and then unfortunately, if it logged your IP and it's not letting you do it again, then that maybe you can go incognito.
I'll try taking it
on
again,
Chromers.
see what happens.
So,
Cookies.
but yeah, I appreciate everyone taking it. So.
Well, and thank you for the great staff support. And just, I think in terms of the structure of the meetings, the last few meetings, I think, have been greatly improved. I mean, these are 3-hour meetings with a lot of material to cover, and just the kind of the plenary style and small group discussions, and the combination of that, I think, has been really more productive in terms of making sure everybody has the information, but that we're able to talk to one another, because there's such richness in having the dialogue between the different advisory committee members that we weren't really getting, I think, before, when we were just sticking to large group discussion. So I appreciate the change up in the structure of the meetings, and think that it's a good improvement, and we're getting a lot more accomplished and more input.
Yeah, and I think the committee is getting, more confident and like expressing their opinions. Maybe early on
That's
they
true.
weren't willing to provide as much direction to staff, but I mean, they're doing that now, so we appreciate it, because ultimately it's their committee. So.
And at the town hall, the switching of the tables and leaving the presenters or the scribes or whatever you want to call them there at the table and letting people go to a different table, that was actually, it's a really cool idea, because, once the new people get there, they say, well, what were you guys talking about? So it gave you a chance to give a quick review, and then you can either add more into that same little discussion that you had, or you get a totally separate idea. So it was a neat way to do it.
Yeah, and we hadn't done that format before, and that was something that Enviro Issues had said, oh yeah, trust us, it'll work. And we had a little bit of skepticism, but I thought it turned out really well, and kind of giving those couple minutes to rehash what the last group did, and then adding on and answering different questions, I thought was a good format. So.
I really agree with that. I think that the town hall event was really successful, and I was really encouraged by the attendance and the participation of everybody that at least was at my table, because I was stuck at the same table for the whole time. But it was really robust, rich conversation, and getting into some really key policy areas, and so it was really encouraging to see that kind of involvement.
Yeah, and we've definitely, we had NCPRD that attended, and I was just speaking with their Milwaukee Bay Park project manager, and she was very complimentary of it, and they're looking to really improve their engagement. So if we can be kind of a model, and we've invested a lot of time and resources into this, and so we do believe in goal one, Greg. So
I know you do.
And everybody here got a copy of The Color of Law, right? Yeah.
they did.
All
Yeah.
right. Good.
So that should have all been delivered to you. And so, yeah, we would encourage you to read that in advance of that December 6th event, because it's a fascinating read. So.
And it goes fast.
Great.
All right.
Thanks.
So one of your questions was about subcommittees on housing, and are any of us interested in working with that group?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts?
Do you want my quick little comments that I emailed to you?
I did get those, and yeah, I've passed those on to our consultant, and we've looked at those and have incorporated those, so we appreciate that.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to the work program and bylaws review.
All right, so yeah, I'll keep this one brief as well. So you're scheduled to attend a joint session with the City Council on November 13th. I guess if
I'm sorry, December?
sorry, November.
Can't be
Wait,
November
wait,
13th.
what?
can
The
it?
joint is December 11th, right?
The joint on housing is December 11th. The bylaws
Oh,
work session where you'll be attending, the City Council work session. I mean, the study session with the City Council is on November 13th.
Oh, so it's the city,
November-
so we come before the planning commission meeting.
It would be before, yes. So it's
Okay.
at 5:15 PM. So if you look in the first paragraph under the action requested.
Oh.
So that was the one that was originally scheduled for, I guess, last week.
I think so.
And I think only Commissioner, and it was originally going to be at 4 o'clock because of the library groundbreaking. But we pushed that back, just one, because we hadn't had kind of this opportunity to discuss it internally within the Planning Commission, and two, we would love for more than one commissioner to be able to attend. So I don't know how many people are available to come, that hour in advance of your scheduled Planning Commission meeting that night. We now have, obviously, the continued public hearing for City Hall, the historic work on City Hall, and then we, I think, have a separate housekeeping amendment process, and we're planning on touching on the comp plan as well. So I don't know if Denny had pulled the commissioners as far as who would be available.
No.
I didn't see anything come through.
Okay, well, I guess this is your poll.
I can be there. I can be there. That's not a problem for my schedule.
I doubt it.
Okay.
I'm pretty tentative. I have our campus OAC meeting that day.
I don't have my work calendar with me, but I'll try to make it work. So,
Same here. I'll block out my calendar if it's not already occupied, but it might be.
I don't know.
You don't have to be there. You don't even have to worry about
yeah.
it anymore.
He'll be hanging out in his floating
On the
home.
river.
Hey, David, is it going to be right at 4 o'clock? Do you know?
No, so this one is at 5:15.
Oh.
Part of the reason we had delayed it from October was because the only available slot due to the library groundbreaking was like right at 4 o'clock.
Okay. I can probably make it then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there still a Design and Landmarks Committee special session on that evening?
I'll have to check with Brett on that. I know because they're meeting on the 5th, and then I do remember that there was an additional meeting sometime in November before Thanksgiving. I can check on, I don't know what time that would have been because.
I mean, it's going to conflict with the Planning Commission meeting anyway.
The Planning Commission anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what time it was scheduled to start.
I have it as 6:15, but I don't know if that was a tentative scheduling or not.
Well, yeah, so that would obviously conflict with with the planning commission anyway.
Right, and if we have something to do, then on the 13th, then I'll be here. So yeah, I can probably make it to that 5:15.
I just looked at my calendar. I'm actually in San Diego that evening, so I can't make the early session or the, sorry.
All right, we'll Skype you in.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, 4 would be great. And so, yeah, kind of just looking through the staff report, it gives kind of a high-level overview, obviously, of starting with the council goals and how that's kind of driven the work program for the council, and especially related to housing and climate action planning, how that's kind of trickled down into actual work that's going to be touching the Planning Commission. I'm not going to get into kind of any of the real specifics. We've obviously already talked a bit about the comp plan update. You had a hearing tonight on code maintenance, and, we're I think, going to continue to see that, especially as we see projects like the cottage cluster study and some additional things that, we're doing some analysis of accessory dwelling units right now as one of the action items that came out of the housing affordability strategy. So that'll likely result in some proposed code amendments. So I would anticipate over the next year that you'll see a number of code amendments, a lot related to housing, and then things that start to come out of the comprehensive plan, things potentially that come out of the neighborhood hubs work. And so obviously there are a couple other major projects that will be touching you as well. The Hillside Master Plan is really just getting going with their public involvement. They're actually having some visioning sessions tomorrow. There's one, they're holding some visioning sessions at Providence. I think the morning one is at 9:30 tomorrow, and then there's also one in the evening at 5:30. And so we would encourage anyone, especially, that live in the neighborhood, but then just people that are generally interested in what's going to be happening at that site, because it obviously it's a pretty central site to the city of Milwaukee. There's other things like the Murphy site and the McFarland site and general kind of improvements going on, proposed for 32nd, and then better connections. So it's going to have an impact on really a lot of things that are happening in Milwaukee. And so that's another one that, ultimately would be coming before the master plan, would be coming before the Planning Commission. So that'll be on your schedule. So we'll be checking in periodically on that, inviting the county as the project lead to come and kind of present to the Planning Commission. I think they've had periodic check-ins with the City Council so far, but we'd love for them to come and brief you guys as well. It'll be a nice reunion for Sherry, with Stephen taking over the project lead on that. And so, kind of looking through some of the additional things. We've been relatively slow on the development review side of things. We haven't had a whole lot of items come for pre-applications or kind of move at least type 3 items, moving that would come before the Planning Commission for a public hearing. We anticipate, if you look on page 4, a number of these items will likely be moving forward in the coming months and early into 2019. We have the Rusk Road proposal there at that Bonaventure Senior Housing. There are a lot of things related to the school district. They need to do a transportation demand management plan for Milwaukee High and the Lake Road Fields. They're going to be redeveloping the high school tennis courts for parking. And then they are also being required to do a major modification to their community service use and Ardenwald for kind of their parking and bus pickup reconfiguration. And then we would imagine at some point that the Coho Point at Kellogg Creek, the cash spot site, will be coming forward. I haven't checked in with Layla as far as where they're at on that, but we'll definitely keep you updated on that. So those are kind of the major things as far as on your work program. I think we had a couple of questions in there about things maybe that you'd want to. Are there items that you would like to really focus on? Are there things that you would like to kind of bring for kind kind of topic-specific work sessions just to get a better grasp on it before it gets to kind of the public hearing stage on some of these items. So any feedback related to that would be appreciated. And then the bylaws, as Denny pointed out in the staff report, I think are pretty standard. We didn't see any need to really change anything related to that. If you've identified any items that you would like clarification on, or that you think don't really represent the role of the Planning Commission, we're happy to bring that up. And, that would obviously be a major focus of discussion at that joint meeting with the City Council on November 13th. So I'd open it up to any questions.
So I was thinking about this, and something that I've really been wanting to do is have an opportunity to meet with the NDA land use chairs. So, and kind of thinking broadly about that, maybe it's an additional item in our work plan related to Goal 1. So I don't know what others feel about that, and I don't think that is like a big workload, but more of a, for a couple of reasons. One, maybe anticipating, changes as we update the comprehensive plan around Goal 1, but just to kind of start a dialogue and to learn more about challenges that they see and ways that, we can work better together on, as these development projects come up and we look for NDAs to give us feedback, how that process is working for them and also for us as we, are making decisions around that. So that's what I thought. What do you guys think about adding something like that?
It's a good idea.
Do you mean like as an ongoing meeting, or do you mean?
I mean, even just within the next year, if we can convene one.
Get them on the schedule.
Time, get something on the schedule. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like, if it's, having it as part of a planning commission meeting, or if it's like a separate meeting or something. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you could do a basic comprehensive plan kind of training, and then hear the NDA land use officers' challenges with,
Something like that, I think could work too, yeah. Just something. So I guess I would add it, propose adding it under, I guess, I don't know where that
Is there something that
fits.
says we meet with city council once a year? Maybe we could put it under that, under meetings or something?
I don't know where that fits in kind of the work plan structure, but it sounds like folks are kind of interested in how we can do it, or, I don't think we want to amend the bylaws, but.
Yeah. No, but we can add that. I mean, just have that. We have basically a planning commission forecaster where we are anticipating both development projects and then just planning projects as far as kind of master plans and comprehensive plan things. And so we can add that to that and try to pencil that in and come back to you and let you know kind of what that, where a good place to slide that in would be.
Okay.
Even inviting them for a neighborhood hubs discussion.
Yeah, that would actually be a really good opportunity to get them involved. So, and that would be sooner rather than later, kind of get that early in 2019, kind of once we have some more refined concepts, I think would be a good opportunity to really kind of reestablish that, connection.
Yeah, certainly before, or as we approach the synthesis phase of the comp plan update, I think it would be really appropriate to get the land use chairs in for a discussion, or some kind of a work session or discussion or something, so that we can hear what they're running into, what their concerns are, before we, really start getting into that final block of work.
That's great.
Anybody else have any other things that they came up with? And I love this, by the way. I mean, it's really helpful to see what we've done. I mean, that's nice. Like,
You're doing
really
things.
Good synthesis. We're doing stuff. We're doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on, and I really appreciate just the documentation of it and having it laid out in front of us, so we can think, look what we've done, and then here's what we're
Yeah.
planning to do, and are there other things? So,
Yeah,
you're
I
going
like
to
it.
say something.
Oh, I was just going to, quick question for David. Is there somewhere we can sign up to find out when the Hillside Manor visioning stuff is? Do you
Yeah,
know?
they, like to get on their project email list?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe that
Housing Authority website.
Angel Sully, I believe, is the project lead for kind of the public engagement. I just, because obviously we're involved, I just got added to it. And so
Okay.
Enviro Issues is also doing the public involvement for that project as well. So, yeah, if you want to email me, or you probably have Angel's and.
Yeah, I have Angels.
Yeah.
It's been on Facebook, too, if you want to try to.
Yeah, we put it on the other day. So,
Who has time for Facebook?
I know. Plus, we all know
Nothing but time.
we know she's an Instagram gal, so. Any other
right.
additional input?
I was just going to say, David already mentioned the Hillside Manor vision session that's tomorrow. And I thought it was on Thursday, but it's actually tomorrow. So I would definitely encourage us to go to that. I mean, that hillside site is uniquely positioned. It's very underutilized right now, given the transportation infrastructure that surrounds it, and the connectivity to the rest of the city and the rest of the region, and future connectivity when you consider the regional trails that are planned to, basically parallel the railroad tracks that go through there, connect out to the North Clackamas Greenway Trail, out to Three Creeks Natural Area and the Clackamas Regional Center, the Harmony campus, and I mean, just the network of buses that go by there, and pretty soon there's going to be a bus route that will connect you on Johnson Creek Boulevard all the way out to Washington Square, and then Fuller Road, Mack Station out to the east. And so it's a very, as far as the city's concerned, it's a very uniquely positioned location with really, really rich connectivity to the rest of the region, and the buses that run by there frequently. It's a great opportunity site, and so we should really, if we can, I would encourage us to show up and advocate for lots and lots of affordable housing, and lots of housing generally, but certainly lots of affordable housing, because that's what that site's supposed to do. And, really encourage them to, consider what can really be accomplished with that site, and how many different, households and families that we can, benefit by doing perhaps more with that site than they're considering at this point, and certainly more than what's been done in the past. It's a huge opportunity site.
Yeah, and the Housing Authority, I mean, they have a desired number of units that they like to see on the regulated affordable housing side of things. But, then part of the vision is, do we want a larger mixed income development, opportunities to have market rate units as well that might help to allow for the construction of even more affordable units to help subsidize that. Working in with kind of the neighborhood hubs discussion, obviously it's pretty close to Harrison, but what are some kind of local services that people could use on site? What are the types of things that, not just for residents of Hillside, but also for people that live in Ardenwald and other adjacent neighborhoods? And so, it is really it's an interesting project that's going to have a major effect on the city, and we see it as a really big opportunity. As far as the events tomorrow, just for those of you not familiar, the conference room actually is a lot easier to access if you park in like the western parking lots where you come in off of Dwyer. There's a western entrance to the hospital that you can just walk straight down that western entrance into the conference room, whereas if you go and enter through the main entrance, you're kind of walking through the whole hospital, and I don't know what their kind of internal wayfinding is going to be like tomorrow. I've encouraged them to put out a bunch of signs, but I almost got lost walking around the hospital because we went and looked at the room for another event. It proved a little bit too small, but it would be great if we got some planning commission representation there. So, all right.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Planning Commission committee updates and discussion items. This is an opportunity for comment or discussion on items that are not on the agenda. Does any commissioner have any updates? Surely we've got some events coming up here that
No.
we can hear about now.
Today is your luckiest day ever. You will never, ever have to hear me complain about the paper. So my email that I sent out, I got a response from Ann Ober, our city manager. I'm assuming that they discussed it with our city attorney. I will read you part of the reply. Your concerns seem predicated on not being able to use your own technology at the diocese, which leads to a paper version needing to be provided. I reached out to our team to better understand why your personal device has been restricted. No one expressed concern. Please feel free to use your personal device as so you desire. So from this day forward, I would no longer want a piece of paper from the Planning Commission unless it is not included on the online packet. And that includes comprehensive plan updates, because I'm assuming that you don't hand out a PC or a comprehensive plan to anybody that's coming in for a development in hardback. You say, go check it online. So I got to assume that the online version is more updated than my current book.
So that you're talking development code or comprehensive plan?
Well, I'm talking this. I don't, right? This should be all updated on the, before we get these pages?
Well, on the development code side of things, when an ordinance is adopted, it typically just, it highlights that section of the development code online, and it'll have like a banner across the top, and it'll say this section has actually been changed subject to ordinance such and such. So the actual kind of simple text only gets updated periodically. So you basically, it's just an additional step of having to click on the link for the PDF to look through what the actual current code is. It'll say that ordinance, 2130 was adopted as of, October 12th, 2018. So there's an additional step of having to go to look for it.
That's fine. I'll live with it.
Okay.
So please, no more paper.
So did you clarify with Ann whether we could get our personal devices seized? That was the whole issue.
Look, well, as she says here, she did not say that it would be seized. No one expressed concerns. Please feel free to use your personal device should you so desire.
So was the concern from a public records request point of view, if you're using that device? And I know that's come up, and it hasn't really been raised since I've been here in Milwaukee.
Messaging each other during deliberation.
Or looking at something.
A public record, or looking at something that was not part of our.
Yeah, it was never that we couldn't bring them. It was that we chose not to, because if at some point somebody from the public made that, I guess, accusation, for lack of better term, then we would have to surrender our device to the city and to the attorney until whenever, they decided we got it back. So that was the concern.
So I don't know, Justin, do you have any input on that?
I believe that concern can be abated or taken care of if you're only accessing what is available to the public through your agenda and packet information that's also available online.
But how would that be proved?
If you use your device, now I can seek further clarification for this, but if you use your device for the business, your business as a planning commission meeting member to message back and forth and do a variety of things, that could be subject to the public records law, and your devices could be seized if a public records request or something were to need a review of those devices.
Right, but I guess I'm still unclear, because if somebody was sitting in the audience and we were scrolling through our packet, I mean, you'd still have to take our device to make sure that we weren't messaging each other, right?
Theoretically, correct.
Yeah.
only if there was evidence that that was happening.
There is ways to have evidence. It's time-stamped. We're on a Wi-Fi network here. That can be proved. Disproved.
They'd still have to take the device to check, right?
They would.
And that would be a
Well, actually,
period
maybe.
of time.
I think it depends on if they can ID you through the server.
I would like some clarification before I.
You know, I'm going to roll the die. I don't want another piece of paper.
Device user beware. You're exposing yourself to some liability, but the city's not going to.
And really what you should do is...
Stop talking about it. I don't want the liability. I don't need my device. I'm not going to do it. I recommend you don't either. I recommend you do.
Do it.
And I can't listen to this anymore.
We'll get some direction on that.
Thank you.
All right, any other updates or discussion items?
I'd just like to say a quick thank you to the city staff, council, mayor. It's been a good opportunity for me. I've enjoyed my time with the Planning Commission here. I've enjoyed getting to know the other commissioners and enjoyed our complex and diverse perspectives and deliberation. Yeah, it's been a really fun opportunity. I think we've had a lot of good, and I think it's a really exciting time for the city. So I'm excited to stay in touch, hopefully cross paths, and see where Milwaukee is in 5 years. So, thank you.
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and we have our forecast for future meetings, although November 27th is TBD. So we'll see what comes of that.
Oh, what's Thanksgiving, the 23rd?
It's actually before that.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving's the 22nd, yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, well, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
There it is.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe we can